Hello there. So here's our daily problem. So you could pause the video, try it out. Once you're ready, unpause it. We'll show you the answer and go over the explanation as well. So the correct answer is E. If you didn't get it, we'll explain it, and hopefully it makes sense at the end of the video. So for this question, they're asking for the main conclusion. And the strategy for this one is to find the actual line that's the conclusion in the initial argument. Once you correctly identify that, then it's pretty straightforward to find it in the answers. Looking at this argument, there's two possible contenders for the conclusion, which would either be the first sentence or the second sentence. And then deciding between those two, you could use a strategy of asking why. So basically, the conclusion needs some evidence. So wherever you think is the conclusion, ask yourself, why is that true? And there should be support somewhere else in the argument. So for example, let's say you think the first sentence is the conclusion. And in simple terms, they're saying, well, instead of relying on the creator's intention, instead we need to rely on people's perception in order to classify artwork. We can ask ourselves why. Why is that true? What evidence do they use or purport to prove their position? And the next few lines talk about a specific example, Wolfgang Pirelli's 12th Sympathy. And if you analyze this, you could see it doesn't really support it. It's more of an example of this conception. Next, we could look at our second candidate for the conclusion, which would be the second sentence. We should consider Wolfgang Pirelli's 12th Sympathy as Baroque. And there's actually an indicator word for conclusions in this one, and that word is should. So should is a value judgment. It's basically saying what you think, and typically that introduces the conclusion. So to drive that message home, we could think of another example that uses the word should. So maybe this person should be president, because if they were a president, they would be a great leader and many great things will happen. You can see from this example, that's their value judgment, what they think is true. What they consider is the best course of action. And just a warning, although should is very helpful in identifying the conclusion, it doesn't always work. Just because you see the word should doesn't mean it is the conclusion. You still have to process and think about it. But in this case, it seems pretty good. It seems like this is going to be the conclusion, but let's investigate a little bit further to clarify exactly why it is. And once again, whatever is the conclusion needs support. So if we should consider this as Baroque, why is that the case? What's the evidence for that position? And the evidence is the first sentence and the last sentence. So the first sentence states that we need to rely on people's perception. And the last sentence states that although Wolfgang considers his artwork to be romantic, modern listeners disagree and liken him to Bach. So the modern perception likens him to Bach, so therefore we should consider it Baroque, because Baroque is basically a form of music that Bach produced. And then that leaves us with the correct answer, E.